Mr. Ortego, would you please give us your full name and your DOC number?
Jake Michael Ortego, DOC number 446422.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ortego, let me explain our process to you. First, I'm going to read some information into the record, and then we're going to conduct a pardon interview with you. Then we're going to ask the warden for his input. Then we'll allow those persons who have a desire to have input to speak. Speaking on your behalf today is your attorney, Ms. Jennifer Cameron. Present but not speaking is Joey Gillespie, Kristen Nail, Cecile McComas, Lee Danielle Honeycutt. Speaking is Cherie Dark. Not speaking is Hunter Pickett, Rick Holm, Jamie Gillingham, Michael Gillingham, Patron Burrell, Gary McComas, Said Dark, and Hugh Sheldon. Speaking in opposition of Ms. Tracy Barbera with the East Baton Rouge Parish District Attorney's Office, Ms. Lucia Idell, and Ms. Brandy Hughes. At the end of that time, you'll have an opportunity to make whatever remarks you wish to make before the board, and then your lawyer will close out, and then we'll vote. You understand our process and procedure?
Yes, sir.
Excuse me, Mr. Marabella.
Yeah.
We have a couple of speakers here present with us as well that I didn't hear you call. Some people that signed in here at the facility.
Who do you have there?
His mother and his aunt,
What is his mother's name?
Diane Jarrow.
Okay, and what is his aunt's name?
Nancy Gotro? Pickett, I'm sorry, Nancy Pickett, my apologies. And his stepfather is also here in support, Mr. Jimmy Jarrow as well.
Mr. Gyro will not be speaking, but Ms. Pickett and Ms. Johnson will be.
Yes, sir.
All right, let the record reflect the other participants there at the facility. This is the matter of Jake M. Ortego, DOC number 446422, date of birth June the 5th of 1981. He is serving a life sentence for second-degree murder, having been sentenced on October the 15th of 2001. Mr. Ortego, is that information accurate?
That's correct.
Okay. Your case has been assigned to Mr. Alvin Roche. He will begin our interview process. Would you please answer any questions he may have?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Ortego. How are you?
Sir,
Good morning. How are you?
I'm nervous.
Just sit back and
Yes,
relax.
I'm doing. I'm a little nervous, sir.
Sit back,
Sir?
sit back and relax.
Yes. All right.
I have a brief presentation and then we'll have a conversation, okay? Mr. Chairman, fellow board members, we have Jake Michael Ortego, DOC number 446422. Mr. Ortego is here this morning seeking to commute his life sentence for a second-degree murder conviction in the beating death of Lance Idell on June 26, 1999, at the Highland Road Park in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Mr. Ortego was arrested the next morning on June 27 at his home and charged with second-degree murder in the death of Mr. Idell. On April 2nd, 2001, some 22 months after this unfortunate incident that resulted in the loss of human life, Mr. Ortego was found guilty as charged with second-degree murder by a jury of his peers. And on October 15th, 2001, he was sentenced to life and hard labor at DOC without parole, probation, or suspension in sentence. Mr. Ortego has 3 arrests on his adult record with 1 felony conviction. The other 2 minor misdemeanor charges were dismissed in 2001 after his second-degree murder trial. Mr. Ortego has repeatedly stated in his clemency application and all of his interviews with parole and probation officers that he is very remorseful and he accepts full responsibility for his part in the untimely death of the victim. He has shown how remorseful he is in the death of his victim and the pain that he has inflicted on the victim's family. Mr. Ortego is currently 42 years old. At the time of the offense, he was 18 years, 21 days old. Just 21 days short of being classified as a juvenile lifer under Louisiana state law. Under Louisiana state law, revised statute 15574.4, a juvenile lifer is considered parole eligible after serving 25 years of the imposed sentence. A difference of just 21 days, in my opinion, does not add any maturity to an individual in making responsible decisions. There is no doubt in my mind that Mr. Ortego made a terrible decision that day. He made a terrible decision when he decided to go to that park. But he has shown that he takes full responsibility for that bad decision. Mr. Ortego, I want you to tell the panel exactly what happened at the Highland Road Park on the evening of June 26, 1999. We need your version. We already know the facts, but we need your version in your words for the permanent record. So exactly what happened?
My brother and I were at the condo that we shared with some friends. We had been drinking. We were pulling beers. On one of the beer runs, they got word that there would be a fight at Highland Road Park. And the topic, the question was, do we want to go watch? Do we want to go check it out? Some people wanted to go, some people didn't. I wanted to go, and I was pretty adamant about it. So we decided we would go to the park. Some people wanted to go to the club. We decided to go to the park. We would go to the club afterwards. We arrived at Highland Road Park. Specific time, I cannot recall. There's a side street that runs alongside of the parking lot. We parked there. We noticed that there was a group already in the park. We waited for a certain amount of specific time. Nothing took place, so we decided to go in and check it out. When we went in, I noticed that I knew some of the guys. We began talking. began explaining to him, you know, my plans for the future, that I was trying to go into the military, and I wanted him to come visit. And through the course of this, the greetings, fight broke out. I ran over to break the fight up. In doing so, I was struck. I just turned and I began fighting the first person I saw. At specifically how long we went to the ground. And we were fighting on the ground, and then he wasn't on top of me anymore. I jumped up and I began just fighting from encounter to encounter.
Mr. Artigo,
Yes, sir.
were you intoxicated at this point?
Yes, sir. I was highly intoxicated.
Go ahead.
And then I don't know the sequence, but I know at a certain point in the initial altercation, one of the guys I was with was holding it. Lance was holding Lance up, and I began kicking him in the face several times. I don't know a specific amount of time. I just began kicking him in the face, and then from there we get up. I see that some of the guys that we were together with were fighting. I split that up, and then it wasn't long after that people began to leave. Like cars were leaving out the parking lot. We left. Got to the vehicle. I noticed my shoes were missing. Our tires in the vehicle have been slashed. So while we're dealing with that, while we're processing everything else going on, I said, let me go back and get my shoes. We headed back into the park. I found one of my shoes. Another one of the guys that came with me brought me my other one. And while I'm putting them back on, I see there's some guys at the railing, at one of the railings that were on the outside of the parking area. We began a slight, verbal altercation. And then I noticed some more guys, some more individuals that were with us were on side me. And then in that moment, I said, kill them. They took off running. I followed as well. When I reached Lance, he was on the ground and I began to kick him. After that, I don't know specifically how long we were there. I know my brother began saying, let's go, let's go. So I headed out following him. And then we got back to the vehicles. We moved the vehicles to try to get them out the road. And we began walking down Highland Road Park. And while doing so, when my brother had contacted one of his friends, he drove by, we got in the vehicle, and we headed back to our place. It was there.
Thank you, Mr. Artigo.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your honesty.
Yes, sir.
Pretty much what the report says. Now, Mr. Artigo, if you had a chance to speak to the victim's family, what would you tell them about what you just explained?
First, I want to apologize. My actions, there's no excuse. There's no words I can say. There's nothing I can do. I know that nothing will bring Lance back. Nothing can undo. But that my life will be spent as an expression of the remorse I feel for what I've done, and that I hope with every part, give me a moment, this is kind of rough. I live now presently and will continue to in the hopes of preventing this from ever taking place again, and of causing anyone to have to suffer again, as Lance did and the rest of his family. And that, I realized what got me to this point was the loss that they had to endure, each of them, Lance and his family. And for that, I'm sorry. But I know that the person I am, I'm not that individual. And I hope that if given an opportunity, I can lead someone else away from being that same individual. And I just want to tell you,
Thank you, sir. Opposition in Mr. Artigo's case comes from the East Baton Rouge Parish District Attorney's Office. First Assistant DA, Ms. Tracy Barbera, and Ms. Barbera is in the hearing room, and I will allow her to make her statement at the appropriate time. We have 3 impact statements. One from the victim's mother, one from the victim's godmother, and a cousin. We also have 14 letters of opposition in this case. The letters come from grandparents, uncles, aunts, siblings, cousins, friends, and former classmates of Mr. Lance Agate. In support of clemency is the victim's mother, and she's here present and will make a statement. The stepfather, aunts, uncles, and cousins. We have 8 character reference letters from his friends and former classmates. We have 3 letters of support from fellow offenders that Jake helped to help them to gain their sobriety by living in a rehabilitation dormitory, and I will talk about the new men's ministry a little bit later. But they credit Jake in helping them see that there was a better way of life. The last letter I want to mention is from Reverend Robert S. Hyde. He is now the director of faith-based programs at the Mississippi State Penitentiary at Parchment, Mississippi. Reverend Hyde is employed by the New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary and was a former pastor of Grace Baptist Church in Angola, Louisiana. He was also the spiritual advisor to Mr. Ortego. And Mr. Ortego worked with him many years at Angola. And in his letter, he explains that Jake had been very remorseful in his conversation with him, regretful, and numerous times he said, man, what a horrible thing I did. I took the life of a human being. I've caused his family so much pain. And he also stated in his letter that Jake, in trying to make amends for this, volunteered for a new program in Angola called the New Men's Ministry, which they, in the program, they have a rehabilitation dormitory. And Jake volunteered to be a mentor to live in that dormitory 24/7 to help the offenders rid themselves of addictions. And 3 of those individuals wrote letters telling how Jake made a difference in their lives. Jake has a low risk assessment. He has a low needs assessment. He's earned his GED. He's housed in minimum custody. He has a good institutional record, positive remarks by the staff. Jake, what is your current job assignment?
I work at the HVAC maintenance shop. I'm assigned to ASNO, but I work for the maintenance. And I'm currently studying to become a certified HVAC technician.
And how long have you had the HVAC job?
3 months. 3 months.
And what was your previous job?
Previous job, when I moved here from Angola, I was a peer support minister, and they just kind of had me in limbo because when I came out, I was a trustee. They took my trustee status. I had to be in population for 6 months, so I was just kind of in limbo with that. I was in school going for project construction management, and once I was able to get my trustee status, they allowed me to then get a trustee job we'll go to the trustee maintenance shop, right?
How long did you live in the rehabilitation dormitory with the new men's ministry?
9 months on the inpatient. When we were on lockdown, we kept the guys segregated from the rest of the population. And I did 3 months in the sober living dorm, which was created to give them a kind of like a transition dorm back into population. It was a support dorm for sober living. 3 months in there, roughly.
Okay. Thank you, Jay. Let's talk about your vocational education. And I'm not going to mention all of them, but you have vocational education, mostly in automotive. You are certified as a engine performance technician, brake technician, steering and suspension technician, automatic transmission technician. You have a diploma in automotive technology. You are a technician in refrigerant, recycling, and recovery. Exhaust system technician. It goes on and on. You probably have at least 15 or 16 certifications in auto repair and collision. Tell us about that.
Well, I went through the vocational school at Angola and received the automotive degree. And then when the reentry program began, we started with we began the ASE program. We started with the automotive, and it was while we were doing that was the alternative sentencing program that they began for the guys in New Orleans. While we were doing that allowed some of us, the mentors, to become certified in other areas as well, in the automotive trade. So that's when I was able to take all those certifications while I was mentoring.
You also have certificates from the National Center for Construction Education and Research, core curriculum, and you have 2 certificates in electrical. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you also have 1 in sheet metal work. And I see letters of recognition. You are mentor in the Angola reentry program and the new men's ministry. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Let me get back to my report. Programs completed, anger management, paid your age, sober group AA, 100 hours pre-release, making peace with the past, codependency, a substance abuse program, celebrate recovery, a substance abuse program, trauma healing, Malachi Dash, moral compass, thank you for a change, and many faith-based programs. Would you like to mention any other program that you've completed in your 22 years 6 months of incarceration?
I don't, did you say celebrate recovery? I can't say, anything, any one of them specifically that stood out. It was going through each one of them that, right? So, I think that about covers it. I think it covered them.
Organizational participation, the Angola Reentry Mentor Program, by Judge Knight, and the New Men's Ministry. So, Jay, let's start talking about your drug addiction and your alcohol addiction.
Right.
Now, I've read this report 3 or 4 times, so I know exactly when you started using alcohol. So tell the panel exactly when you started using alcohol.
I want to say I was like 11, 12 is when I first started, when I say I started just experimenting, it wasn't, I didn't get heavy until in my mid-teenage years, 14, 15, 16.
In your interview with parole and probation, you said you were 15 years old.
Sir?
In your interview with probation and parole, you said you were 15 years old when you started drinking with your friends, and alcohol was responsible for you being expelled from high school. Is that correct?
Correct. That's when I was communicating with the guy. And if I recall, he was more adamant on when I started heavily drinking to get drunk, right? And going out with friends and specifically trying to get out of just drinking. I think that's what we narrowed it down to about 15.
And at 17, you said that you had started drinking at least 2 cans of 22-ounce beer and an unspecified amount of hard liquor.
Yes, sir.
When's the last time you consumed alcohol of any kind? Jake, today is
2017, 2018. 2017. It was some home brew. I was at the I want to say the Great Ship processing plant. They had some home brew, and I drank a little bit.
And you also stated in your interview that you didn't start using illegal drugs until the age of 20. Is that correct?
No, sir, that's not correct. I started using illegal drugs prior to coming to prison. But it was once I came to prison that I began using highly addictive drugs, right? And I established an addiction to.
At what age did you start using illegal drugs?
Probably around the same time I started drinking, experimenting with marijuana at a very young age, and then started taking later on pharmaceuticals, and continued on LSD, ecstasy, things like that. Got away from that, and I believe that's what I told the parole guy about it. When I turned 18, I let all that stuff, a lot of that go, but I continued drinking. I left a lot of drug stuff alone, and I continued drinking.
So tell the panel this morning what you have done while incarcerated to conquer the demon of alcohol and drugs and gain your sobriety.
Well, I went through countless programs trying to figure out what it was why I couldn't let this go, why I couldn't. But for me, it wasn't just about addiction, it was just dealing with life. I never truly learned how to function in life or around people. I thought I had to meet everybody's standards socially, or, you know, academically, or anything I was applying myself to. And a lot of times substances will give you that boost of confidence, give you that added edge that I thought I needed, ultimately creating an addiction. I was nurturing an addiction, but I had to become comfortable with who I am apart from all that and establish boundaries and be able to say, you know what, maybe I can't do things. It was just learning how to function like a normal adult, going through the process of life, facing challenges and overcoming them apart from a coping mechanism or using substance as a way to manage stress.
Mr. Ortego, what is your sobriety plan if and when you ever release? How will you maintain your sobriety and stay away from illegal drugs and alcohol?
I have a very good support system with my family. They are sober, but don't struggle with it. None of them struggle with addictions. I'm getting lined up to go to intensive therapy. I work a lot better on individual with individual treatment, but as far as anything beyond that, I'm gonna ensure, and we're already laying the groundwork in the event that I do go to Colorado with my family, that I will have the necessary support. They will be aware of the issues that I have, and we will have safeguards as far as just having people available too, and people who understand what I come from, so ensure that I am not pressured into a situation
Mr. Ortego,
that naturally would wind up working against life recovery.
Mr. Ortego,
Yes, sir.
are you a drug addict?
Yes, sir.
Are you an alcoholic?
Yes, sir.
Do you realize that you could never drink alcohol again in your life?
Yes, sir. I do. I know that. I think, and from the way that you speak, I know that you're aware it is a choice that you have to make. And if you are conscious and humble enough to understand your limitations, that I can never go, I'm totally powerless when it comes to this substance, that I know I can never choose that as an option for me to just for recreational purposes or a coping mechanism. You know as well as I do that at a certain point, you have to choose to want to go down that road. And that's a choice I never want to make.
You have a disease and you have to treat that disease for the rest of your life.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about your disciplinary conduct.
Yes, sir.
Article has 20 disciplinary write-ups and 22.5 years of incarceration. 18 of those write-ups are Class B write-ups. The last one was an aggravated work offense in September of 2018. He received a reprimand and had no changes in quarters or loss of good time. So it was a fairly minor, but he had no write-ups in the last 5 years. Transition plan, understand your transition plan. You have two options. One is to live with your parents in Baton Rouge, and the other is to apply for an interstate compact to Colorado to live with an aunt in Colorado Springs. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Have you decided which one you're gonna use?
My first choice would be to go to Colorado.
One vote alone? Do you have any comments? Concerns, remarks, observations?
Yes, sir, Mr. Roche. First, I'd just like to say to the family of the victim, I'm sorry for y'all loss. Jake's been here for a little while with us. at Hunt. He's been doing well. As you noted, he's completed a lot of programs. He works as a trustee for our maintenance department here at the facility. I guess what stands out to me, looking at his record, is that he started working on himself, taking programs all the way back to as early as 2002, 2003. Even knowing that he was facing a life sentence. So, I commend him for working on himself, even when he didn't realize there was an opportunity for parole.
Thank you, Warden. Mr. Chairman, I do have a recommendation in this case, and I will share it with my fellow board members at the conclusion of this interview.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions. So now we'll hear from your supporters. Ms. Cherie Dark. Ms. Dark, are you there?
Your name up there.
Here. So sorry, I apologize. Yes, I would like to speak on behalf. Can you hear me?
If you would mind introducing yourself and tell us what you'd like us to know.
Yes, sir. My name is Cherie Dark. I live in Colorado Springs. Jake is my cousin. We were really, really close. It was me, Troy, and Jake all those years growing up. And then he was obviously made some bad decisions that I think he's paid for in the last 22 years. And I would just love to have the opportunity to support him and bring him home. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, Ms. Dark. Then we'll hear from Ms. Nancy Pickett.
Yes, sir. I'm going to read Nancy Pickett's, if that's okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. My name is Nancy Pickett, and I live in Colorado Springs, Colorado. We were devastated when we found out there was a fight and one person, Lance, died and my nephew was arrested. We couldn't stop thinking about the family that lost their loved one and couldn't believe my nephew had a part in that. From the very beginning, I said he should suffer consequences if he was found responsible. He was found guilty, but his sentence seemed excessive. He has served more than half his life in prison. He entered prison at 18 and is now 42. We are praying Jake is granted parole and can show he learned from that tragic night. He has a job waiting for him, a vehicle, a place to live. Our family support is strong, and we will provide the necessary support he needs. I have 3 responsible, successful children who are very willing to help in this transition. I also have numerous friends that are willing and able to help, including a psychiatrist and a therapist. 15 of them are at the Garden of the Gods this morning, praying for a positive outcome, but he too will have to be responsible. If not, I will have no problem calling law enforcement and turning him in.
I would also like to say that I have a friend that owns an automotive shop who's more than willing for him to work for him.
Thank you, ma'am. Now we'll hear from Ms. Diane Gyro.
That's me. Good morning, I'm Diane Gyro. I'm Jake Ortego's mother. I would like to take this opportunity to express my sincere condolences to the victim's family. Losing a loved one, no matter the circumstances, is life-changing for everyone. I feel certain stating that I know that this was not in Jake's plans, and Jake is quite regretful of his decision on that tragic death. My vision, my hope is for Jake to be granted clemency and parole because he was so young, having just turned 18 when he was incarcerated. He will be starting from scratch. He has plenty of support ready to help him on his journey to being a responsible, productive citizen. Given his experiences, perhaps even be able to give back to others and help them find the right path. That being said, I would like his permanent address to be with my sister who lives out of state. I will make sure that Jake has a reliable vehicle, giving him the opportunity to have no issues getting to work. My sister Nancy would take over his reentry into society and support him, guide him. I don't expect Jake to acclimate in a day, and it will take time. And my sister and her children, Jake's cousins, will support him and guide him. Jake's adult life has been spent as an inmate. While being incarcerated, he chose to continue with his education, learning skills, along with participation in programs such as anger management and others, instead of just stagnating and giving up hope. Hope for perhaps clemency and parole one day. Jake has a loving and very supportive family, and if he is granted clemency and parole, he would have a loving and supportive family members' help, along with many others that are willing to step in and give a guiding hand. Jake was on his way to being a contributing, responsible citizen when this tragedy occurred. He in no way anticipated such an about face to his life. I'm certain Jake would not have chosen his current path. If given opportunity, I'm confident Jake can and will show he is worth a second chance.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from the opposition. Before we hear from the opposition, I'd like to put on the record a few other people whose names I didn't read at the very beginning. Also present in opposition is Mr. Robert Mathern, Terry Mathern, Landon Dozart, and Miss Lisa Idell. Also on Zoom is Mr. Bart Lassard. So now we'll hear from the opposition. Ms. Brandy Hughes. Good morning, Ms. Hughes. Can you hear us?
Yes, but that says Bart.
Good morning. If you will introduce yourself and tell us what you'd like us to know, please.
Good morning. First, I'd like to address the age of 18 and 21 days. He may have only been 21 days older than 18, but he was old enough to enlist. So I believe that the 21 days is more than old enough for him to be convicted, like he was, of second-degree murder and pay the crime of second-degree murder. I don't think we should be discussing that 21 days or reflecting of him with the juvenile system at all. We should not even be putting that to address today. He was 18. We sit here and we listen to him talk and describe what he did to Lance that night and the use of his drugs and alcohol. Was he under the influence that night? Okay, probably. But we sat there and listened to him with no remorse, as far as I'm concerned, describe his beating of Lance. He beat to death a 16-year-old with his hands, with his feet, and left him there. But he was not drunk enough, he just described, to go back and get his own shoes. He was not drunk enough to make his way home and to clean and wash that night his own bloody clothes. So this is not a teenager, an 18-year-old, who was oh so drunk that he went out and just happenly got into a fist fight that night. You heard him describe he was pumped up and amped up and he wanted to fight. And he said, kill him. He had malice intent to cause bodily harm that resulted in the murder of a 16-year-old who was my cousin. He has been afforded this time in jail to make something out of his life because he has no stressors in his life. He has none of the things that were going on in his life at that time. What he has is just an abundance of time to do this. You know what Lance has? None of those opportunities at all. None of them. It's a slap in the face to sit here and listen to the list of things that he's gotten to do in there. They've only been made possible because he sat his ass in jail. The support system is a joke. They're the same people that were sitting behind him in court, making the same laugh that I sat here and saw his mom make when he described kicking Lance in the face while someone held him. His mom behind just then made a laugh. Maybe it's unintentional. Maybe it's because of the nerves that she has. But this was the same thing that we witnessed in court day after my family sat there. He is a murderer, straight out murderer. It is character. It is not an instance of I pulled a gun and shot somebody. He was not threatened. There was not a, oops, I did this. This was, I did it. I beat someone to death.
We need you to wrap it up. We try to give everyone 3 minutes to talk and you're over that, but I'll give you a few seconds to wrap it up.
I have opposition to Jake getting out because I think he is the same exact person that he went in. He does not know how to deal with the stresses of the outside world. And he was convicted of second-degree murder with no parole.
Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate your comments. Miss Lucia Idell am I pronouncing that?
Good morning, it's Alicia, and I'm the victim's sister. I was not prepared for this because I was under the intention that I could not say anything on the meeting. But I just want to say, Lance and I was 5 years apart, and we were together every day of our lives. And whenever you took somebody from me, you took one of my best friends. Lance doesn't get to see all the things that we went through in life. He doesn't get to meet his nephew and his, his other brother that my mom was pregnant whenever he got killed. That's a whole nother story. Brandy, you said it really well. I appreciate your speech because I felt everything she said. I don't feel like Jake is remorseful. As Brandy said, not only did we go through it every single day in court, his mom just sitting there with this smirk on her face, never once came and said, I'm sorry, to us, to my mom. I don't feel like he should be granted to get out because like Brandy said, he committed a crime and the punishment for it is life. Lance doesn't get that chance to do all the things that Jake got to do. And, I have just about 2 weeks ago, I was able to truly forgive Jake after all these years. I forgive you for what you did, Jake. I do. But I think that you have to pay the price for what you did. And that was a life sentence. So again, this was all over because I wasn't expecting to be able to speak, but I don't feel like you should be granted parole.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your comments. Now we'll hear from Ms. Lisa Idell.
I'm excited. Thank you, Mom. As I stand here today wondering why in the world this person would ever get the chance to get out of prison any way, shape, or form, it really makes me so angry. Oh, wait, I forgot he does have his rights. Unlike my beautiful son, I didn't get this chance. This monster has taken so much away from me and my family. Lance was such a beautiful person inside and out. He was very intelligent, a straight A student, a freehand artist. I was so excited to see what life had held for him. He was about to graduate, but instead of graduating, we could only celebrate his life at the ceremony. Have no more Christmases, no more birthdays. When I heard Jake was up for this, it just floored me. I just took everything out of me, and then I have to sit here again and hear it over again. I beg of y'all not to let him out because I feel like he has no remorse. I feel like he's the same person. He got out for a little while. Had a little bit of freedom, he drinking again while in prison, doing drugs while in prison. I mean, I just think if he gets out, it's gonna be the same person. Just took everything. Have to live our life every day, and we talk about him a lot just to keep him alive. My son Landon, I always call him. I was pregnant for him whenever Lance was killed, and he talks about it like he knows it, because that's how much we talk. Never forget the beautiful, and wonderful.
Thank you very much. Ms. Lavera?
This is Tracy Barbera, Physician Attorney's Office. This is, it's not supposed to be personal for me, right? Because I'm a professional, I'm a prosecutor. But I remember these people, and Dana Cummings and I tried this case together, and it was so emotional, dealing with all these young people, a large group of young people that made terrible decisions, absolutely terrible decisions. I remember standing in that courtroom when the guilty verdicts came back. I remember it like it was yesterday. And, it's so hard to explain the process. And all of you know me, I respect them. I am a red, white, and blue lady. I respect the law. I have spent 33 years in the prosecution. And it's so hard to explain to these loving family members. And I know there's loving family members on the other side. It's so hard to explain to them how we get to this situation. When they sat in court that day and heard Judge Richard Anderson impose a life sentence. And so, and this is not about me, this is about them. But I'm sitting here when we first got word that Mr. Ortego had applied for clemency and the first hearing was set and then postponed until today. All I've thought about is, what's your Hail Mary, Tracy? What's your Hail Mary? What can you say to convince somebody on this board that it's not? And quite frankly, I don't know the one thing that I can say. I understand the concern about talking about his age. I would like to say that, say he had been 17. It would be 25 years of parole. He hasn't served that. And I don't know if this is true, but I have been told that Governor Edwards, when he does commute sentences, when he grants parole eligibility, he's not doing it past his term. And his term will end in January. Again, I don't know if that's true or not. If it is true, my concern today is that if the board recommends commutation and Governor Edwards, in his rights under the law, grants it, he grants immediate parole eligibility, then Jake Ortego would have served less than the 2 years than he would have served had he been the juvenile at the time. But please don't take that as me standing here before you saying I think he should be included. It's just something that I'd like to point out. I am concerned about his disciplinary record. Members of the board, I've stood here or through Zoom for many, many hearings over the years, and we've seen people in jail for 30 or 50 years, they have less write-ups than Mr. Ortego. And I know that write-ups are more frequent when young offenders go because they have to take time to make sure they get used to their surroundings. And I understand that. But for him to have some, I realize he hasn't had it in 5 years, but I ask you to please look at the nature of the ones that have occurred later during his years of incarceration. The nature of them. After he had taken all of these classes and he had started the self-awareness back in the early 2000s, there were still write-ups, significant write-ups. And I don't know which ones. So I stand here with this family. I feel like, although we haven't necessarily kept in touch all over the last 20-something years, I feel reunited with them today. And I do stand here in solidarity with them and ask that you please not recommend commutation of his sentence.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lavera. Mr. Ortego, is there anything you'd like to say before we turn it over to Ms. Cameron?
No, sir.
Wait, no. No. Yeah. Ms. Cameron?
Yes, sir. This case is one of the harder ones. It absolutely is. I think personally for me, because I knew what happened personally. Jake and I grew up in the same neighborhood. He's a few years younger than me, so I knew about the violence that was happening in our neighborhood. Fights at Brett Parks were common, which is still kind of shocking to me because we weren't in a bad neighborhood, but the kids were just, it still baffles me to figure out what was going on back then. But Jake grew up in violence. I know, in the packet, we haven't discussed it much today, but he grew up watching his father, beat his mother. He was a victim of those beatings. His brother Troy was too. Unfortunately, Jake, surviving that, Jake's go-to was the drugs and alcohol. That's what he went to. And he had straightened up, was planning to go in the Navy, had an enlistment date set, and they were celebrating that night when they decided to go and watch this fight. That decision right there is one that Jake, every time we have a conversation, it's the one that comes up the most. It was my decision to go and watch the fight. I shouldn't have done that. We should have gone where everybody else wanted to go. The remorse that Jake showed today is not just for the panel's benefit. It's not for the people watching's benefit. It's literally the way Jake recounts what happened every time we talk about it. He struggles. That struggle is what caused him to go to drugs while he was incarcerated, and he went to stronger drugs than he had been doing on the street. Jake knows that he can never do drugs or alcohol again. As he's expressed, he's planning on individual intensive therapy because he does recognize that he does not, although the New Men program at Angola and has been instrumental here as well with a program that they're starting here that's still in the development stages, as I understand it. He knows that for his own benefit, he needs that intensive individual treatment, and that is our plan. He has also agreed to go through Parole project. If we can get him enrolled, they are not accepting people until they're at the parole stage at this point. So we will try to make that part of his reentry plan as well. That program is crucial for that initial transition back into society. I sat here and listened. I can't imagine the victim's pain. As a mother myself, I can't imagine losing my son, and I feel so sorry for what they've been through. But what Mr. Roche noted is true. We have psychological studies that show that the brain is not fully developed until the age of 26. Jake was barely 18 that night. He had funneled what he has described to me to be almost a case of beer. And I know y'all can't tell, but Jake's really not a big dude. So a case of beer on board his system would have put him in a state where he had no control. And that is not an excuse. It's just that, it's fact, unfortunately. If this board, I would like to remind the board that if this board does choose to communicate Jake today, he is only 42. So under the Act 122 and 2045, we would have to do another 3 years to hit that 25 years. And that is obviously a possibility. During that 3 years, Jake plans to continue his what will be next month 4 years of sobriety. And lastly, I would like to note that Jake's disciplinary write-up stopped when he got sober. He is 4 years sober as of next month, completely sober. And he has not had a write-up since 2018. So on that note, Jake and his family would just like this board to have mercy today and grant his commutation so that we can get him back into society, get him the intensive treatment he needs to deal with what he's got going on, and give him an opportunity to make amends to the best he can in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cameron.
Yes,
Okay, Mr. Roche.
Mr. Artigo, before I get to my recommendation, I'd like to thank the victim's family.
I'm supposed to be able to speak. Jeremy, sorry.
Well, we allow 3 speakers and we've had 3.
And I have 6 people told, who you had, Lisa and my daughter. Yeah. Okay.
Ma'am, I'll let you speak. I'm not gonna cut you off. Go ahead.
Talk about age.
I've got to limit you to 3 minutes though.
I get it. We talk about age. This is Lance. Lance was 16 and a half years old. He wants to say he was drinking that night and he drank a case of beer. As she said, he's very small. My husband drinks. I know what a case of beer does to a person. That guy would not have even been walking. Now less being able to move around and do these actions that he said. And let's go back to what he said. He come back to get his damn shoes. That's pretty comprehensive what he was doing. But he also came back and he beat and he kicked Lance. And he said in his own words, kill him. If that is not intent, if that is alcohol talking and whatever, no. He said, kill him. And he did. He did. And you think that is remorse? It is not. It is not. Because after he killed Lance, he actually beat someone else. I wish y'all had the picture of that guy. The only guy that stood up to him that night. He beat him severely too. So do I think he should be eligible for parole? No, not in 25 years, not in 40 years. Let me also say, Sunday, October the 1st, would be Lance's 41st birthday. Do we get to have a party? Do we get to sing happy birthday? No. I will go to Lance's grave and put flowers. And I will look up to the heaven and tell him how much I love and miss him. That's all. That's all I will get to do every year for his birthday. But he still celebrates his. You know why? Because he made a choice that night. He made a choice. Lance did not have a choice that night, nor does he have any more choices. So I beg of you not to give him this opportunity of parole.
We're ready to resume, Mr. Russia. Ready to go? Yes, please. Okay.
Mr. Artigo, I want to speak to the victim's family first. I want to thank you. It took a lot of courage and fortitude to come to this hearing room and to make your statements and make your request known to this board. It takes a lot of courage, and I appreciate it because the victims are always part of this process. In making a decision, this panel has to consider the crime. Always consider the crime. This crime was a horrible crime. But we also have to look at who the person is today. Lance has taken tremendous programs. I'm sorry, Jake has taken tremendous amount of program. He's addressed his substance abuse, both drugs and alcohol, with substance abuse treatment, celebrate recovery, codependence, and sober. He attends NA and AA meetings on a regular basis. He has volunteered for numerous programs such as the Angola Reentry Mentor Program, and especially the New Man's Ministry, where he helped other individuals conquer their addictions to drugs and alcohol. He has armed himself with multiple vocational skills, HVAC, automotive. He has a paralegal diploma from the Blackstone Institute. Based upon the positive remarks award alone, the community service he has rendered as a mentor, excellent programs, excellent advancements in his education is in the area of vocational skills, the mitigating circumstance of his age at the time the offense was committed. My recommendation is to recommend to the governor to commute his sentence to 75 years with parole eligibility after serving 25 years.
Thank you, Mr. Moshe. Mr. Freeman.
This is a real hard case, considering everything. Also, want to thank y'all for showing up today. None of us know the loss or can feel the loss that y'all are feeling. Also thank the family for showing up and supporting him. My vote will also be to commute the sentence to 75 years with probation after 25.
Parole eligibility. Ms. Jackson.
To the Idell family, I'm so sorry about the loss of your people. I truly am. I won't even pretend to fully understand what it feels like, but I can certainly imagine. Say something, but I don't want you to be offended by it at all. And I want you to know it's coming from a place of concern and compassion for you all. You know, I've only been on this board a couple of years, and there have been a lot of profound moments in hearings. And this was a profound moment today. But I want to share with you a profound moment that we had at a parole hearing a few weeks ago, where a woman had lost her son as well. And she came to the hearing, and when she got up to the podium, she said, I came here fully intending to oppose the release of the person. But then she said, I talked to a very wise young man. And that young man told me that my God isn't just my God. He's the God of both sides. And her response was, whatever God's will is, I will accept. And I say that it was profound for me to hear someone say that God is just not my God, it's God of it. I've listened very carefully. And I know for the family, what you see is the same person that took your loved one's life. Don't know that you will ever be able to see beyond that, and I do understand that. But what we see, someone for so 22 years has done a lot of good. Not just working on himself, but one of the things that impresses me the most about any individual who's serving time is not just what they do for themselves, to improve themselves. But when you have other offenders saying, this person has made a tremendous difference in my life, then I know that that person is making every effort he can to make amends for the harm that he has caused by returning some good to somebody else in the world. And that's what I see with Mr. Ortego's performance during his time of incarceration. I think he has done everything that he can do as a human being to show his remorse by trying to be the best person he can be, not only for himself, for others as well. And so I don't want you to take my vote or any vote of these board members in any way, minimizing what you're going through. It's what you do. But we have to look at who he was then. We have to look at who he is now. And I will say, nobody in this room is the same person who makes the same choices that we do at 18, 42, or 70. You know, and so after looking at his record and what he's accomplished, my vote likewise is to recommend a commutation to 75 years with parole eligibility and serving.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. I also would like to thank victims for being here today and having the courage to come and speak. There's very little I can add. I think the words of all of my colleagues, especially Judge Jackson, certainly resonate with me. My vote likewise is to recommend to the governor that he commute the sentence to 75 years with parole eligibility after 25 years. So you have a unanimous vote, 4 members. So we will recommend to the governor that he commute your sentence to 75 years with parole eligibility after you serve 25 years.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for being here today.